Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I thought I would do a video talking about baits that I have seen be extremely productive in southern waters, but yet are not that good in northern waters. And it's not necessarily that they don't work in northern waters. I think in a lot of cases they just haven't caught on. But it's amazing to me in my travels how I see, if you go down south, every one of these baits is probably in most southern anglers' tackle boxes. And if you go up north, most anglers won't even have them. And part of it has to do with the type of techniques and the type of water that we have down south. You've got a lot more reservoirs. Up north, you've got a lot more clear water, natural lakes. You've got fish that feed on really small forage or bluegill or panfish versus down south, you have fish that are feeding on a lot more of your pelagic species, your shad species, your herring, bigger profiled, different types of forage. And that leads to, in general, fish reacting a little bit different, and the anglers therefore pursuing bass in different manners. But even though these baits, I feel like, don't get used much in the north, it doesn't mean they won't work. I just feel like most of the anglers haven't really caught on to them. But I thought it would be fun to do a video talking about some baits that I know down south, most anglers have in their tackle box, but yet if you were to come up north, you just don't see it in anglers' tackle boxes. And I think I'll do a reciprocal video where I'll talk about baits that work up north that I think most southern anglers don't have in their tackle box, but probably should. So let's dive right into it. The first one isn't necessarily a specific bait. It's a type of bait, and that's your big double Colorado bladed spinner baits. This is the Bango Blade. This is a Zorro bait that has a lot of attention, but really what I'm talking about are your big single or double Colorado bladed baits. A lot of times they'll have an orange or a red kicker blade on it, usually white or chartreuse. Big, bulky spinner baits move a ton of water, and generally you don't find that they're carried by nearly as many anglers up north. And a lot of this has to do with the differences in lake type. If you're on a lake like a Grand Lake where you've got channel swing banks, maybe you've got some good rock, you've got some docks, and you get a lot of muddier type water, those can be absolutely dynamite, especially during like that pre-spawn window. But up here where we've got a lot more clear water and you don't get the same mud that you get down in like Oklahoma and places like that down south, those big spinner baits with big bulky blades, Colorado blades, a lot of brightness to them, don't seem to get used nearly as much. Now, having said that, I actually think there is a time and a place where those will work on most northern waters. The thing is, they're really difficult to find, and unless you're willing to order some online, you're probably not going to find them in a northern bait shop because they just don't get used nearly as much. So that's one for sure that down south anglers have. Up north, most anglers don't have. Okay, another one. Your big Flutter Spoons. Like this is a Nichols. This is actually the mini Magnum Flutter Spoon. So this one's a little bit smaller than the bigger ones like the Ben Parker spoon. But you do not find big spoons like this in many northern anglers' tackle boxes. But if you go down south, these are pretty much all over the place. And there's good reason for that. Down south, a lot of your bigger quality fish are going to be feeding on gizzard shad. And those big spoons do a great job mimicking those gizzard shad. But having said that, what a lot of anglers don't realize is how productive a big spoon can be up north, especially if you have some Cisco in your lakes. Just throwing that out there. But it's really good. Especially I like the little bit smaller size, like your mini Magnum size spoon. Some of your other, what 10 years ago were considered your big Flutter spoons. Strike King's got a good one. I like the crocodile spoon, the 1 ounce size. But nowadays you can get absolutely giant Flutter spoons. And definitely not utilized by northern anglers nearly as much as southern anglers. All right, another one. And this one might surprise some of you. It's this guy, the Zoom Magnum Trick Worm. So the Magnum Trick Worm, I feel like, is a staple in southern anglers' tackle boxes, but it's not nearly as popular up north. And it's not like it's too big of a bait. The fish absolutely will eat it up here. It just, in my opinion, goes back to the shaky head. You know, a lot of people started throwing the shaky head, and that kind of led to the bigger shaky head worms like this Magnum trick worm. The reality is, though, the shaky head's not utilized up north nearly as much as down south. It is a staple bait by southern anglers. Northern anglers do not throw shaky head nearly as much. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one, you got a lot more grass in your lakes, so the shaky head doesn't necessarily work nearly as well in grass. You have a lot of anglers that would prefer to throw a Ned rig or a drop shot or even a jig head worm over a shaky head. So because of that, I think a lot of southern anglers would be surprised to find out that the Magnum trick worm is not that popular up north. But it still catches fish. It is a great bait that a lot of anglers, if you want to utilize, can catch them up north, but we just haven't caught on to it yet. It's a really difficult bait to find in local bait shops if you're trying to find it, especially up here in Wisconsin. So that's a third one. The fourth one might surprise you too a little bit. And it's your big super spooks, the Head and Super Spook. Man, this is such a staple in most tackle boxes down south. But yet the northern anglers, I feel like, don't generally throw walking baits that are quite this big. Most people will downsize to like the Spook Junior or some of your smaller walking topwater baits. Now, having said that, absolutely a killer bait up north. Caught tons and tons of fish on this bad boy. But the reality is a lot of northern anglers, I think, are a little bit scared by the overall size of this bait. And again, it does a really good job at mimicking a lot of your gizzard shad, a little bit bigger profile bait, and therefore the fish just don't seem to get to chase bigger bait quite as good, but you can absolutely catch them. Smallmouth will eat musky baits that are 3 times this size, so you can catch them. I just feel like a lot of anglers just don't put them in their tackle box. They don't give them nearly as much whirl. So the Head and Super Spook, not used nearly as much by northern anglers as southern anglers. And then the last one that I want to talk about today is I would bet you that most southern anglers, 90% of southern anglers carry these baits, and less than 10% of northern anglers even own one, let alone carry it in their boat. And that is your big 10XD and 8XD Strike King crankbaits. These are definitely a very, very popular bait for your deep water cranking. Definitely not utilized by northern anglers much at all. Again, you can't find one of those in a bait shop that's around here. They definitely still work. You catch a lot of fish on them if you want to throw it up here. And in fact, I would argue that you get a lot of lakes where, because they're so clear, you get a huge population of the fish that live really deep where you can't get another crankbait down to them. But for whatever reason, northern anglers, if you get down to that 20-foot range, generally move away from crankbaits and start picking up heavier things like jigs and wobbleheads and Carolina rigs. Whereas southern anglers will do whatever they can to get well past that 20-foot mark, and that means casting giant deep diving crankbaits. You know, I don't necessarily think it has to do just with forage, because the 8XD really is not that huge of a bait. And even the 10XD, even though it's big, is not like just overwhelmingly huge. You know, if you compared that to a bluegill, that's not that much different than your average size bluegill that we have up here in the north. But those crankbaits are ghosts in the local bait shops. Again, you will not find those anywhere. So if you want to do some deep cranking, you're going to have to order those if you want to use them up here in the North Country. Whereas down south, you go every bait shop, they have piles upon piles of big deep cranks like those 8XD and 10XD. So those are 5 baits, I guess 6 with the 2 crankbaits, that I have found through my travels. Southern anglers almost all have, and northern anglers probably do not carry with them when they go fishing. So let me know in the comment section, what are some of the baits that you guys feel like southern anglers rely on heavily that northern anglers do not use? I'd like to hear what you have from to throw into this discussion as well. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, we'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.